boy Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. And we're here, guys. We're on the other side of the end game. We've seen it. $1.2 billion in box office gross later. Marvel's Avengers Endgame is one of the biggest things that's hit the world, you know? And you all had those feelings of that roller coaster ride of happiness, sadness, fulfillment, a big love letter sent off to you and us to say thank you for the 11 years that you've given us the MCU. And when everything was all said and done, you sat there, and after 24 hours or 48 or 72 or however long it took you to let it sit with you, the question hit you, well, what's next? And that's what we're going to talk about in this video, folks. We're going to talk about the what we know, what's unknown, and what I'd like to see coming from the MCU in the future. Now, if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame yet, now would be the time to exit. This isn't for you. We're going to dibble and dabble into spoilers a little bit, and I don't want to be the one to ruin it for you. Also, I would not look in the comments below because they're going to be wide open and people are going to just talk freely. So, if you haven't seen it, I'm going to give you some time to go ahead and exit, all right? You gone? Cool. Now, for those of us who have seen it, let's all take a moment to mourn, shall we? Can somebody tell me how to get things back the way they used to be? Oh God, give me a reason. Ah, now that was a good moment, right? You need to get that out. Now, after you've eaten all the cheeseburgers in the world and you've told people how much you love them, 3,000 is the answer. It's 3,000. We're back. And we got to move forward. We got to move on and see what else happens with the rest of the MCU. So, let's start off first with what we know. What we know, one, is that Spider-Man Far From Home is the actual final chapter in Phase 3. The Infinity Saga ends with Spider-Man, which is interesting because it seems like everything kind of closes up with this. But Spider-Man is a good use to go back to be the last chapter because he's the only character that kind of has to 100% reintroduce himself to the world. And after the snap, what we've learned is people know and are fully cognizant of their memories post and pre-snap. But the world moved on. So it's going to be good to see Spider-Man have to reintroduce himself to his classmates, that who have graduated, some who were also in the same situation that he was, and kind of we as an audience go through the ramifications of what having to reaccess your life is after the snap. Also, Nick Fury and Maria Hill seem to be active in Spider-Man Far From Home. So if that's the case, perhaps they are trying to kind of get him in to be the new leader or new point person for what will be now known as the new Avengers, right? 2, we don't have an official Phase 4 yet set, but there are some dates that have been picked out. There's some things that have been put together, and we know a couple of movies that are for sure on the pipeline. Now, there's nothing being said about these, but we know for a fact that there's a Black Panther 2 coming, that there's a Doctor Strange 2 coming, and once James Gunn is done with Suicide Squad, he gets to come back home and he's going to do Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Those 3 we know are probably coming. When? Your best guess. But casting has already begun on a couple of films, one of them being The Eternals, which has been rumored to have Angelina Jolie, and rumored to have Kumail Nanjiani from the comedian episode of The Twilight Zone and The Big Sick. Now, we also have knowledge that Black Widow is getting her own film, starring Florence Pugh, who played Paige in Fighting With My Family, the wrestling movie earlier this year. We have David Harbour, and we have Rachel Weisz. And it's going to be a spy film, which, based on what we've seen so far in Avengers Endgame, is probably going to have to be a prequel story. And we also have Shang-Chi, where we don't have an actor picked out, but we do have a director in Destin Daniel Cretton, and it's being written by David Callahan, who did Ant-Man Rewrite, who worked on Wonder Woman 1984, and who was supposed to be working also on Into the Spider-Verse 2. That is what we know as far as rumors and whatnot, with the pipeline that's going for the film division. But 3, Disney gets to play a lot more now on their new Disney Plus service. So we have a bunch of shows that are getting spent off from the cinematic universe. Now, I know you'd be like, oh, well, they already had TV shows, but those TV shows were done by Marvel TV division, and these are going to be done by the Marvel Studios division. And for those of you who don't know, those two divisions don't play that well together. But now Marvel Studios is doing their own thing with their own branching. Now, while they're not getting full 12 episode runs or like 14 episodes runs or multiple seasons that we know of yet, we do know that we're going to have the original actors who played them in their films getting to play with these characters in film. I mean, on the getting to play with these characters on the Disney Plus service for like 6 hour episodes, which would be like 6 mini movies, if you will. So here are the ones that we know that we have. We have WandaVision with Scarlet Witch, Elizabeth Olsen, and Paul Bettany. Now, depending on how they do it, we don't know how they're going to reintroduce Vision, because Vision is not back on the board once Endgame is over. But it is being rumored that that's going to take place in the 1950s. How we get there, how we play, it's going to be up to Marvel to kind of decide. We don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what they do to get us there. We also know that we have Loki, which could be based on what we've seen in Endgame. We don't know where Loki ends up. He grabs the Tesseract and just goes off on his own. So there could be, his show could be based on the alternate universe or alternate timeline where he just goes gallivanting, quantum leaping the hell around all over the timeline, doing random stuff that only Loki can do, right? We also have word that there's going to be a Falcon and Winter Soldier film. A Falcon and Winter Soldier television show, which, okay. What I think we now know that happened in Endgame, it's going to be interesting to see if that title sticks, or if we're going to just be playing with basically them sharing the mantle or doing a double mantle of Captain America. I would be excited to see if kind of both of them get a chance to be it, but I get why Sam was your choice to be the new Captain America, just because, well, in the films, Bucky has been towing the line back and forth between villain and not villain, and not quite cognizant, while Sam has kind of been the right-hand man since Winter Soldier on, so he should be the next in line. And I think also diversity gives you a little bit more of a, not every one of these lead characters is a straight white male. And then there's one more that's been rumored, but not quite signed off or 100% said, is the Hawkeye flick, which could go any type of way. Hawkeye is still on the board once Endgame is over. And we don't have a version of Kate Bishop, who in the comics takes over the Hawkeye mantle in form, but it looks like the film has set up that he's been training his daughter to be Hawkeye. He even refers to her as that in the opening sequence of the film. So it should be interesting to see if we get to play with him training his daughter as opposed to training Kate Bishop, which is it'll still be a young lady being the next Hawkeye, but it won't necessarily be canon to the comic books, which I'm okay with. They've been playing fast and loose with things here and there. I'm quite okay with that. All right? So those are the things that we know. Here's what's unclear. We're now at a point where we don't have either Iron Man or Cap to play with. And for the longest time, Iron Man and Cap were the brains and the heartbeat and the through pulse for the entire MCU. No matter what happened, everything kind of went back and meshed with the two of them, and they were our through lines. Now that they are off the board, Marvel needs to do their best to find a new person to take the mantle, man or woman, to take the mantle to be the next heartbeat or face, if you will, of the MCU. Now, numbers suggest that with $1 billion for both of them, Black Panther and Captain Marvel would be the natural people that the audience have selected. The issue with that is both of those characters are characters that don't really focus solely on Earth or Earth as a whole. Black Panther is the king of Wakanda, and that's mostly what he focused on, and Captain Marvel is doing all the space stuff. So her coming back to Earth all the time isn't just feasible. As far as Marvel lore goes, Spider-Man makes the most sense because he is, before all of the MCU began and we started using B and C list characters to build the MCU up, Spider-Man was the A list character that no matter what, you could use him and he was going to sell some stuff. He was sort of like Batman is to the DC. Problem is, they don't have complete access to Spider-Man, so I don't know if you want to give your entire keys to the kingdom to a character that Sony will be still taking back and forth and still has most of the rights to. So It's going to be interesting to see who, from this point forward, becomes your through line or your bloodline or your heartbeat for the rest of the MCU. Curious to hear what you guys said. Who do you think should be the next person to kind of take over that mantle or lead the MCU into the next phase of whatever it is they're doing? Which leads me to my next question, and it's a little bit unclear. What is the plan for the next phase? Do we do phases again? 11 years and 21, 22, now with Spidey 23 films is a very long time to do something. And they did it masterfully. They had a couple of duds, but overall, they made a through line that worked and was completely and 100% successful. With this, though, the balls that they have to juggle in the air, I don't know if they would want to do that again for another 11 years. I think the phases might have to be smaller. I personally think they might should do some one-offs, do a couple of movies that are basically solely a story of 1 or 2 movies or 2 to 3 movies and kind of just keep it shorter. I don't know if juggling 21 films, especially when you start doing streaming services and all of this, if you want to combine all of that, I think you're assuming that the audience is going to be able to do this with you twice. And I don't know if that's quite possible. You want to give yourself some leeway on storytelling that you're not having to juggle and for this long amount of time, this storyline. You might want to just do a beat here, do 3 and get out. I'm okay with another phase or like a phase 4, or if you do another phase or a saga, which the Infinity Saga is, instead of doing 10 to 11 years, you might want to try and create that to 4 to 5 years just because age of the actors, like Spider-Man, Tom Holland, while he still looks like he is a high schooler, that's not going to last forever. So you want to kind of tell your stories in a truncated enough time that you can kind of get in and get out. I also don't know if you'll ever, because of the question before of who's the heartbeat, I don't know if you're going to have anybody that everyone connects to as much as those guys. So it might be, all right, trial and error with this guy. This isn't working as well. Let's move. So it's going to be interesting to see what we do with the future of the MCU and how, from this point on, if we do long form storytelling the way that they did again. I just think it's going to be. I think they'll do it, but I think it might be done in smaller doses and to tell smaller bits of stories. But as a person who is full of riches and now has more to choose with, number 5, Disney now gets to play with their Fox toys. So Fantastic Four and now XMen are now being folded in. And it's been said that Kevin Feige has said that the plans for whatever they're doing after Phase 3 ends have already kind of been set in stone. They know what they're doing. They know what they were doing. And they kind of had these all planned before they got X-Men and Fantastic Four. I believe him. I don't think he's blowing smoke. I think all of this has kind of been planned out. And I feel like the reason why most of this works so well is because they are pretty good at laying out what it is that they want to do. That said, at some point in time, the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, and the X-Men are going to have to be folded into the batter to make a new soup or a new cake. X-Men's going to have to take a little bit longer because Fox still has to burn off the last Dark Phoenix movie, which I think you're not going to want to put another X-Men on the table until that releases in probably like 2 years beyond that. So I'd say the earliest that we get anything for the X-Men, probably not until 2022, if then. And I don't think that's a plan on their table. But I would like to see at some point we get to play with like some other characters that the Fantastic Four have. You can put them in a little sooner. You don't have to wait as long. And I also think now that you have the Disney Plus service, you can kind of put some of these characters in and do a show without necessarily giving everybody a film. I think we have now gotten to the point where not everybody has to have a film, but if you give us a 4-episode, hour each Disney Streaming Plus service, I think we're all in, right? I think we're all going to be there. So those are the things that we know and some of the things that are unclear. But these are the things that I personally want. One, I don't know if everybody caught it. Some have, because I've seen some people talk about it. But in Endgame, there's a line that Okoye gives to Black Widow when they're doing, after the 5-year jump. and they have the new Avengers kind of splintered off doing random things. And Okoye says that there's an underwater earthquake that has taken place. Now, my brain immediately went off and was like, Namor, like that's who that has to be. And I think what I would like to see is the perfect way of doing a king versus king situation in Black Panther 2, where you get T'Challa based versus Namor, and you kind of do a kingdom versus kingdom type of way. I don't think any dialogue that was used in Endgame was used superfluously or just thrown out there. I think there was a point to that, and I think it's just like a little breadcrumb that they give us every now and then. So I would like to see that. I also think that's the only way that you can really use that character Namor, because Namor is kind of in the same situation that the Incredible Hulk is, where their rights, they can't really do a film solo of that character because the rights still belong with Universal, I believe. And if they make a single solo film for him, Universal gets all that money. Whereas if they have the rights to put him in all the buddy picks all they want, or duo films all they want, and Marvel keeps all the flicks. So I think it's a way to put Namor on the board without having to give him his own solo film, and you kind of give Black Panther, who I think one of the biggest issues with Black Panther is that he has a villain problem. You've already taken Claw off the board, and you've used Killmonger. Manape or M'Baku has already been used. So you don't really have a plethora of other villains, because we're not going to start using the KKK. So I think you want to give him someone that's on his level to use, and I think that would be the smartest way to do that. All right? 2, I think it's time to start. We've already done the space thing. We've seen that. We're going even further with the Eternals. We're doing the martial arts and Asian thing with Shang-Chi. I think it's now time to start doing more of the mystical zombie vampire type stuff. And I think we need to put in we need to somehow find a way to use the Midnight Suns. For those who don't know, the Midnight Suns, they have many versions, but Strange, Moon Knight, Ghost Rider, and Blade are all a part of that. And those are Moon Knight, Blade, and Ghost Rider are 3 characters that I would like to see being put back on the screen. And I think Doctor Strange can be your entry point for that. I think it is rumored that Doctor Strange's next villain is to be Nightmare, and Nightmare has a connection to both Ghost Rider and Doctor Strange. And I think when you're dealing with souls and underworld and hell and all that stuff, Ghost Rider fits into there. And then you can kind of subsequently put in Blade, because vampires are right in that same situation. So I want there to be a branch of the MCU that starts doing these weird vampire zombie type things, but not necessarily affecting the other ones. Like Blade, yes, you still be in New York or wherever you decide to put him. Detroit was on the TV series. You can still put him in that world, but if the Avengers are fighting Thanos, I don't think they're calling Blade. You know what I mean? So I don't think he needs to be as big, but I think, yes, that world should all be connected, but just start splintering off to kind of do their own things. And then finally, the last thing that I really want, I think everyone has been saying that they want their next overarching villain to be Galactus. I'm not quite there. I do want to introduce Silver Surfer, and I would like to see Galactus at some point in time, but I think the next best villain to give them is to give them another intellectual who outsmarts them, who plays with them. And I think for me, the next best villain to use is Doctor Doom. I think Doctor Doom should 100% be their overarching villain. Now, that doesn't necessarily need to be a 22-film arc for Doctor Doom, but I think you could easily, once you put Fantastic Four on the board, I do think that Doctor Doom should be somebody that we need to see, and we need to see a version of him at its best. I think that's a character villain that, even if there are things about the Fantastic Four movies that Fox did that I like, Doctor Doom, as much as Julian McMahon tried, just didn't work. He didn't give me what I wanted from Doctor Doom. And he's a villain that I think should be done correctly in some form, so that we can kind of see. He's one of Marvel's top 10 villains, period. So I would love to see him back on the board and kind of getting his just due, you know. But that's it, guys. That's what we know. That's what's unclear, and that's kind of what I want to see. What do you guys want to see, huh? What do you guys want to next to the MCU? Where are you standing with the MCU? Who should be leading? Who should be Who should be the next heartbeat of the MCU? Are you happy with where we're going? Do you want more diversity? I want to hear all about it, guys. Go ahead and leave your comments in the comment section below. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe and ring that bell. Be a part of the founders, guys. It's going to be the first 500. You'll be the founders of this channel. You get 500 in, I might give you guys something nice. You know what I'm saying? So go ahead, let your friends know, subscribe. If you haven't already followed us on Twitter, you can find us at HollywoodADI. You can also email us. You can email us at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. Also, this past week, we dropped it on Friday, which normally we drop on Monday, but the podcast that talked about Avengers Endgame in depth. We go super spoiler, but we have a point where we talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, what we loved, and what it meant to us. You can find that podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, anywhere that plays podcasts, and listen to what we thought about it, all right? So that's it for now, guys. We made it through. We're better for it. We're sad. We're happy. It was a good time. And it means a lot for me just to know that 11 years of storytelling, my life, I've gone through a marriage. There's so much things that have changed in each of our lives for 11 years. You just got to give a big thank you to the Avengers, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Kevin Feige. Until next time, guys, I got my ticket. You got yours.